If any of you have been to the Kodak passageway, then you'd know that there's a very nice restaurant there called Aish wa Malh, and the owners of the restaurant are with us here on the panel. Nadia Dropkin and Dina Abuelsoud. They're going to talk about what they're trying to do downtown in terms of creating new spaces, interesting places, and is their presentation ready?
Okay, so can you hear me? Yes. I want to thank Omar and Beth from Cluster for inviting us, and also to Mohammed Al-Shahid for suggesting that we participate in the conference. Okay. Which one do you click?
This is your shot.
Which one do you
So you press this one to go forward.
Okay. Okay, so this is a picture of my home, of our home, for 5 years, 5 of the 6 years that I've lived in Egypt. This is where I resided with my business partner and friend, Dina. We grew flowers, gonameya, lilies on the rooftop of our penthouse terrace. We had a small urban garden where we grew chili peppers, peaches, clementines, grapefruits, kumquat, figs, olives on a tree that was brought from Gaza, lavender which was a gift from a professor from France. I even raised pigeons. I know. Okay. This building is adorned with this advertisement. This beyond massive sketch of the same building that it covers is accompanied by the slogan, Ana Wast al-Balad, I am downtown. The logo of Ismailia, the real estate company for which this ad is made and who owns this building, is pictured off to the right. Ana Wast al-Balad, I am downtown. I distinctly remember the first day of a class that Khalid Fahmy taught on cities at AUC. He asked us to introduce ourselves and state what part of the city we lived in. When it was my turn, he scoffed when I said Wast al-Balad. What is Wast al-Balad, downtown, centre-ville? Where is downtown? What is the physicality of this identifier that Fahmy was calling into question with his scoff? Who is downtown? Who is downtown for? How do projects like ours, a hostel, a cafe, a restaurant, make and shape downtown? How do our personal politics, which inform how we run our business, allow for alternative spaces in this neighborhood in which we work, live, eat, drink, and play? As business owners and residents of downtown, we are deeply invested in and thus stakeholders on different levels of this space. All 3 of our businesses to date, Dina's Hostel, Cafe, and Aish wa Malh, are located within a 2-block radius of each other and of this building, which also housed Dina's Hostel for 5 years. This conference has allowed us the opportunity to reflect out loud with you on what exactly we have been doing these past 6 years in downtown, some of our struggles, our successes, our questions, and where we, as 2 young female entrepreneurs, stand and operate within this space. In 2002, 13 years ago, Dina moved to Cairo from Alexandria on her own. She came to downtown in search of cheap accommodation and ended up working in a number of different hostels in the area. Taking a basic salary of 250 Egyptian pounds, supplemented by modest commissions from her tour sales, her opportunities were bleak. Yet she had a vision of a place where tourists would not be hustled or sexually harassed, a place that had clean bathrooms and provided guests with good hospitality. Borrowing money from friends and family, she managed to open her own hostel in 2009. Dina's Hostel opened its doors with just 4 rooms. Needless to say, the hostel was quickly successful and grew to be a hub not only for international travelers, but Egyptians and foreigners living in Egypt as well. Over the years, Dina expanded the hostel by renting out the neighboring spaces that tenants vacated due to the high rents. When the hostel closed last year, there were 18 rooms and the place could accommodate over 50 guests. Many groups from the art, film, and cultural spaces in downtown, as well as the quote-unquote alternative tourism groups, stayed there. The hostel was unique not only that it was women-owned and run, and that it was clean, but also in how Dina used the common spaces of the hostel. Over the years, the space held weekly film screenings, exhibitions, workshops, and she even had partnerships with refugee organizations to provide emergency shelter for women. After the revolutionary uprising and after the revolution-related tourism died down, Dina struggled to pay her high rent bills. The rent rates of the apartments which made up Dina's hostel were established when tourism in downtown was booming. During this last period, Dina felt she was working for the owners of the buildings, as all of her income went towards trying to cover the rent. Instead of working with her to renegotiate the rent rate to reflect the then current market rates, to preserve this space that functioned both as a hostel and a community space, the company that owned the building forced her out, in large part by turning off the water. This unwillingness to accommodate a business such as Dina's Hostel, a business with an alternative approach, forced its closure. We're currently looking for a new space. Okay. From 2011 to 2013, I was a graduate student here at AC. I often complained with my colleagues about how there were no good cafes to work and study at. This dissatisfaction and need was the seed of caffeine. Caffeine was funded from a student loan that I took and Dina's savings. But we also had help from our community. Our brilliant logo was a gift from Valley Arif. We had architectural advice from Omar as he would pass by the alleyway on his way home. A drink manual and recipes were assembled by the talented Angela Smith, and there were others. The support we received was immense. People were invested in the concept of the space, in its potential, long before we even opened. We wanted to create a cafe that we, as residents of downtown, wanted to be in, that we needed desperately, that we felt was missing from our neighborhood. The space that we renovated had previously been a clothing shop. And at one point it served beverages. With caffeine, we have tried to create a space where global coffee and tea culture blend with the spirit of Cairo, eclectic and familiar, cozy and sometimes surprising, but always charming and personal. Caffeine is a business run by young entrepreneurs, and as such, we try to bring a youthful character to it. Yet. If you go to caffeine at 7 in the morning, you'll see it packed with the likes of an older generation, such as the illustrious Madame Raga, pictured here. Caffeine is a business run by young entrepreneurs, and as such, we're trying to... Oh, sorry, I already read that. Okay. Since opening, Caffeine has hosted bi-monthly art exhibitions. Amy here, she was part of the opening. This past spring, with the assistance of Alexandria Stock, we worked to reconceptualize this aspect of the cafe and initiate the K Project Space, which seeks to address the in-between in both in terms of physical space and disciplines. The idea for this new conceptualization started with the exhibition Cairo Past Futures by Mohammed Al-Shahed. What was different about this exhibition from previous shows was who was producing the project, the ways in which the work could be discussed, and where the money from the sold pieces went, in this case to help fund an issue of Cairo Observer. At K Project Space, we thus seek to host works made from interdisciplinary practices that involve art, as well as creating a bond between such innovative projects that require support and a public that wishes to actively contribute to these undertakings. So this is the opening for Shahed. You see how the alleyway changes. Moving on now to our latest project, Eshomal, a space that we had our eye on for many years. We thought that its spaciousness had such potential and demanded that something special be made of it. To be honest, Dina is the one with the courageous entrepreneurial spirit. I was terrified. I thought the place was too big and the rent too high, but she insisted that it could not be left. With this, we leaped With this leap, we envisioned a new food establishment that would offer a distinct taste and menu that was missing from the cuisines of downtown and arguably Cairo at large. The building dates back to the beginning of the 20th century, and while initially divided between a patisserie and a mattress store, since the middle of the century it has been joined into one larger space and has been a food and drink establishment since. Aishamal, the newest incarnation of the space, is a restaurant and a cafe that features new Italian cuisine. This month we will celebrate our one-year anniversary. In addition to serving breakfast, lunch, and dinner daily, we also organize supper clubs and now have live music. Recently, we have done catering for the Townhouse, Cluster, Cinematheque, which are for us really important collaborations. Our clientele at Aishamal, like Caffeine, is varied. We hope that people who are looking for a good atmosphere, good food, and service find such things at Aishamal. The activists, artists, and literary folk, they're there. Businessmen and women who work and have meetings in downtowns come too. People who are in downtown to shop also pop in. More recently, as the reputation of the restaurant has become more established, we have started to attract people from as far as New Cairo, Sit October, and even Alexandria who come to downtown to eat at Aishamal. Just last week, we had a guest who said that she had not been to downtown for almost a decade, but made the visit to come for brunch with her family. We also have downtown residents who make Aishamal their daily spot. A regular guest called me up on the phone one night to thank us for improving the quality of her life in downtown with the establishment of Cafe in Aishamal. We have succeeded in bringing people to downtown, and we have done it in our own way. Making our places of businesses inclusive and accessible to a wide public is very important for us. One of the ways in which we negotiate this is through our critical engagement with food and drink culture, which is an essential aspect of our projects. We wanted to offer everything from shay al-arusa to a really wide selection of imported teas, different types of coffee. It was important for us to offer a spectrum, especially when so many food and drink establishments in Cairo are really pitched around class and not having such kind of diversity on their menu. Our menus are carefully crafted, from the names of the dishes, what descriptive language we use, how we translate plates, to how we price various items that we choose to include. We labor in this process as a way of critically engaging food and drinks and people. This is a supper club. We can stay there. Can we go back? Okay. Before concluding, I can't leave the big G question unaddressed. As Shahed noted in a question he posed to us for a forthcoming piece on Aishamal for the Cairo Observer blog, small businesses, including cafes and restaurants run by young entrepreneurs, much like us, have been primary engines for both the flourishing of vibrant urban culture, but also for gentrification and displacement. He asked us, will the impact of a place like Aishamal, will the impact of a place like Aishamal take a different trajectory? The question he poses is a difficult one, and yet one that is with us all of the time. As I have tried to suggest through this anecdotal tracing of our projects, we live and work in downtown. Our businesses and our investments are in our own neighborhood. We do business in very personal ways, not only through our physical presence in the spaces, but by connecting with the people and communities who frequent them. Further, we did not force people out of the spaces that we rented. As you see from the photos, Cafe and Aishamal and even Dina's hostel were empty for long periods of time before we took over the leases. And yes, maybe we are part of a certain type of gentrification, and so are others. But what we don't want to be part of replicating is enclavic class structures in relationship to food and drink and consumption. Our engagement with food and drink is more critical than that. So while we need to address questions of gentrification, it is also important to add a certain complexity to this conversation by also thinking about internationalism or cosmopolitanism. One of the very first reviews of Caffeine referred to it as a Berlin-like hipster cafe. But we have local artists, local staff, a mixture of local and imported products. There is a local reading to be had of this space. How can we go beyond reading places like Caffeine or Eshomal as wholly imported things? Is this the only lens that we have to understand what is going on in downtown? And of course, we must ask ourselves, what does it mean that a series of successful businesses in downtown are jointly Egyptian, American owned and run? Does it matter that I'm American? There is a long history of cosmopolitanism in downtown, and these things and processes are dialectic. Reducing caffeine to saying that this is a version of a Western cafe in Cairo by calling it a hipster place is limited. And yes, at Eshomal we serve iced coffee in mason jars that have schlepped across in my luggage. I like having this little piece of New York here in Eshomal. To conclude, downtown is an interesting place, not just because I'm from New York and have romanticized it. A big part of what makes downtown interesting is the personal investments in it. There is so much potential here, especially when people don't simply fuel investment into the area, but when people invest themselves into the space. Our time, energy, creativity is here in downtown. I think the strengths and success of our business is twofold. First, stemming from the fact that we have created places that we were missing from our own neighborhood, and second, from our personal investments into these spaces. We're talking about an alternative approach, which is not about these large-scale anonymous visions that see people only as consumers and not doers, but an approach that encourages independent and personal projects. This is not to say that projects such as ours are without challenges, quite the contrary. The presumably simple job of providing consistently good food, good coffee, good service, takes a great deal of labor and constant supervision. It's not easy. Neither Dina nor I have any experience in this field. We have and continue to have to overcome huge learning curves. Then there are the bureaucratic nightmares of licensing, permits, constant inspections, and inaccessibility to information. For sure, being women doesn't make it easier. We also have the huge responsibility of employing now over 30 people, but we are also creating jobs, training new shifts, female baristas, pizziola, waitress, and so forth. We, as residents of downtown, want a place to have a good coffee, a tasty snack, a hearty meal, brunch, a shisha, a bowl of house-made artisan ice cream, or a fresh tiramisu. This, we hope, is our contribution, offering these services to you, here in downtown, in spaces that have become a hub for people to gather, socialize, and be creative, and allow for a particular experience. While it's hard and exhausting, it's also rewarding and worth it when we see these places buzzing and we receive positive feedback. Dina's hostel, Caffeine, and Eshomal are our small personalized interventions in downtown, which we hope make it a more interesting place. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Nadia and Dina.